Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episode 10 of season 4 of Legend of Korra called Operation Beifong. And as the title implies, the Beifong family is really front and center in this episode. We get the answer to one of the big questions of the series, and we also have some nice stuff going on with the folks back in Republic City. And let's actually start there, and then go back to the Beifongs and whatnot. Now the character development for Prince Wu continues here. We get to see him suggest to President Raiko a perfectly reasonable course of action in evacuating people from Republic City, and Raiko's reaction kind of mirrors the audience, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, Prince Wu, that's a pretty good suggestion. Good thinking." And then just immediately after we've all gone and gotten a little bit more respect for Wu, he immediately undercuts it by in his conversation to Mako by saying like he just did that to try and impress girls, and that's a very Joss Whedon sort of move. I mean, even sort of saw him in an interview talking about where you put the audience's expectations up, and then you undercut it. I mean, it's really a classic move for just really creating memorable moments, and that's definitely one for Prince Wu there. But that said, it does show that he is, at the very least, knows how to think in a kind of a tricky manner. I mean, I kind of see a situation where Prince Wu was sort of like, okay, I'm going to do this thing that's going to help the situation, and I'm going to do it in a way that also helps me. So I do think that is a little bit of genuine growth on his part. I mean, the old Prince Wu probably wouldn't have even been able to come up with any useful ideas whatsoever. So I think Mako's influence is sort of rubbing off on him. And I do like how even before Prince Wu kind of opens his mouth and sort of ruins the whole situation, Mako says to him, "You're kind of turning into the sort of guy I wouldn't mind working for." And I think this is really sort of giving us, setting up some things for where Mako might ultimately end up. And I can kind of see him at this point ending up sort of the bodyguard / mentor unofficially to Prince Wu, sort of continuously working on turning him into a better guy. Mako having been a police officer, guy who's lived on the street, who's known poverty, known a hard life, and is close pals with the Avatar and an extremely influential business lady and a guy who probably is going to be a movie star. Yeah, okay, that's some nice qualifications. And if he were to get a job working for Prince Wu, that would give him an opportunity to probably get his family out of his ex-girlfriend's house, and give his grandmother a royal that she could just slavishly dote on endlessly. And of course Prince Wu would eat that up. We've already seen that Wu and Jin, I think that's the name of Mako's grandmother, they get along. They get along wonderfully. So I kind of think that would be a nice way to end things for Mako and his family there. Also, over in Republic City, we get to see Varric and Asami take these rather goofy-looking mechanical suit designs to Raiko, and he's like, whatever, I want spirit weapons. And again, to Varric's credit, he's like, no, not a chance in hell. I'm totally not going to give you what I wouldn't give Kuvira. And Varric does, of course, realize, being familiar with the concept of corruption, that Raiko is just as susceptible to it as Kuvira was. You can't go around just handing out power to people willy-nilly without considering what's going to happen when, say, whatever it is you're giving to them, whenever the immediate crisis is over. I mean, if they were to do it, yeah, Raiko would have a weapon that he could probably use to chase Kuvira off, and let's say somehow maybe even defeat her. But then what happens when the dust clears and Raiko's the one with the spirit weapons? Well, who's to say that that power isn't going to go to his head and he's not going to decide to do something bad with it? And there are a lot of examples of that in history, that you can't just go around giving weapons to people to fight people you don't like and not expect that they could turn around and use those weapons against you someday. Just as an example, there is a little place called Afghanistan, And back in the late 70s, America gave Afghanistan a whole bunch of weapons to use to fight the Soviet Union. And that worked out pretty well. The Afghanis just bogged the Russians down. It was basically like the Russian Vietnam. But then the political winds changed, and it turns out, and then Afghanistan decided they didn't like America quite as much as they used to, and well, recent history, right? So this also kind of brings us over to what Korra is up to this episode, where she goes and talks to the spirits and tries to get them to help fight Kuvira. And Kuvira does, Korra does make a not unreasonable case. The spirits live in the human world now. A lot of them live in Republic City and like it there. It's their home, and you should be willing to fight to defend your home. But the spirit pops up and is like, hey, this is basically what Unalaq was trying to do. Use spirits to fight his enemies. Basically, he's like, you're just trying to drag spirits into fighting in human politics, and we want no part of this. And then the spirits are just like, okay, later, Korra. And, the spirit also does make a pretty reasonable case. It's just, and you can put it any kind of way you want, but it ultimately boils down to humans wanting to use spirits to fight over human politics. And when you boil it down to that, when you boil it down to what it unquestionably is, it's kind of hard, not in my book, to not take the spirit side on this. Whatever happens in the human world, well, this too shall pass. But the spirits are still going to be around. Of course, Kuvira messing around with the spirit tree, that you'd think that the spirits would take a little bit more of an interest in. I mean, we already did see the spirit world sort of lashing out a little bit over that. I think if Korra had pressed that case a little bit more, she might have had a little bit better luck, but it's impossible to say. So, let's see, what else? Well, yeah, I think that kind of covers Republic City. So I guess we should move over what's going on with the Beifong family. And I do like quite a lot of what happens there. The big one that for me was Toph kind of really puts a nice cap on things when she's basically said things like, this is like I'm just old now. That's why Katara didn't get involved in the Water Tribe's civil war. That she and Toph and Zuko are just really too old to be going out there and getting into fights. I mean, look at last season. We saw Zuko lose to that fight to the earthbending fella in the Red Lotus. Now, keep in mind, this is a guy who probably is one of the most powerful firebenders in the world, if not the most powerful firebender. But he's also a really old man whose prime is well past him. So it's kind of and we've always seen that bending is a matter of both mental and spiritual training, but you can't, but it also requires more than a little bit of physicality. So, and we've seen that doing a lot of bending can take a serious toll and leave a person exhausted. So it's just as Toph says, they're just, in terms of the mental and spiritual connection to bending, Toph and Katara and Zuko are probably as strong as they've ever been in their whole lives, but their bodies just can't take the strain anymore. I mean, if I'm doing the math on all this, they're like what, in their 80s, 70s, or 80s at this point in life? Yeah, there's a reason why you don't see a lot of 70 and 80-year-old people running around getting into fights. Even people who may have been studying martial arts or things for years and decades even. It's just old folks' bodies just can't take that sort of strain. And there's also the sort of simple fact that as people get older, they come to accept that their day in the sun has passed, that they have to leave the big battles of the world to younger people. And again, that's just a part of life. We also get the answer, of course, to one of the big burning questions of the series is, who is Lynn's dad? And I absolutely love what they did with this situation. It's a perfect example of what I was talking about, of building up all this big stuff and then undercutting it. And of course, it turns out to be It's like some guy that we'd never heard of that Toph met long after the original series had ended, and she and the guy didn't stay together because things just didn't work out. It kind of reminds me of the final Harry Potter book, where you find out like Draco married the younger sister of some minor character who was only mentioned a couple of times, and Luna married the grandson of the guy that wrote Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It's just sort of the idea of like not everybody marries somebody they met in high school, basically, and thank God for that. Oh, boy, people I went to high school with. Ooh. But anyway, it just sort of just kind of again, it was I think a really big dig at the fans who were just sort of expecting some absolutely epic story and all this other stuff. A lot of people, of course, were kind of hoping that her dad was going to be Sokka. Well, we still don't know who Lin's dad is, and remember, it is stated that Lin and Sue do have different fathers, so I actually think it would be kind of cool if Sue's dad was Sokka, simply because we've really seen very little of what happened to him afterwards. I mean, we did get that flashback appearance where Chris Hardwick did his voice. There's that. We do know that there was a statue of him outside the Southern Water Tribe Cultural Center, but whether or not Sokka ever had a family, or whatever happened to, if anything, if things lasted between him and Suki, we don't know. And that's to me a little bit disappointing. So if that were to turn out to be the case, that of course would raise the question of, hey, what happened to Suki? But yeah, I think we might learn a little bit more about what happened to Sokka before the end of the series, but I don't think that we're going to find out too much. That's something they'll probably save for future comics. Like the Avatar of the Last Airbender comics are still coming out on a pretty regular basis. And Toph even references a metal bending academy that's something that Toph in the comics did. So it really wouldn't surprise me if once Korra wraps up, sometime next year they start putting out Legend of Korra comics that are going to pick up where the show left off. And the two Avatar series will sort of fill in the gaps as time goes by. Let's see. What else? We also get to see Lin and her mom sort of bury the hatchet a little bit, and it's kind of hard not to It's kind of hard not to blame Lin for being upset about never really knowing her father growing up. Now remember, she says, "I never knew my father." She never said, "I never knew what my father's name was." So it implies that yes, she knew who the guy was, and just that he was never around in her life, which kind of raises the question: well, what happened? I mean, did he die or something shortly after he and Toph broke up, or did he just move somewhere else? And what happened there? Or did Toph for some reason keep the guy away? Which again doesn't really seem like the sort of thing Toph would do. And she does describe her ex-husband as a nice guy, so what happened there? Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, of course we got to talk about Bolin just absolutely fanboying all over Toph, and you got to love the fact that Toph really has not changed since she was a kid. She just absolutely has no time for that sort of nonsense whatsoever. But she does give him credit for being a lava bender, which even she acknowledges is a pretty rare talent. So it wouldn't surprise me if before the end of the season we get to see Bolin and Toph together again, and maybe she kind of agrees to sort of formally train him as a metal bender. That would be pretty cool. And we also get to see Opal forgive Bolin for what happened with her family. So that was good. Let's see. I also liked that scene between Toph and her son-in-law, where he goes like, "Hey, mom, how you doing?" She's just like, "I told you never to call me that." Just such a great Toph moment there. And of course, this leads to this absolutely epic thing at the end of thing, where she basically literally condemns Kuvira in front of her own soldiers. I mean, here's Toph, the person that invented metal bending, saying that Kuvira is an absolute disgrace to this whole art that so much of Kuvira's army depends on. I mean, that's going to cost her some serious political points. And I can't imagine that the soldiers are not going to be able to look at Toph and go like, "Holy crap, that's Toph." And speaking of the soldiers in Kuvira's army, did you notice they had that black mask on their face? I guess this is what happened when they take that sort of gas mask looking thing off. It makes them look an awful lot like the sort of like the Cobra foot soldiers from the old 80s G.I. Joe cartoon. I don't know why, but that made me laugh. And let's see. We also get to see Batard Jr. sort of freaking the hell out when he thinks that the super weapon is about to kill his sister, which I guess shows that, well, sure, I'm willing to throw my family in jail, but I don't want them dead. That's something, I guess. And of course, this episode we also find out that it is, as many of us suspected, that Julie did not genuinely side with Kuvira, and that it was all a thing in order to try and put a stop to what was going on. And again, it is Julie who points out that Bolin's heart was in the right place, and that it's kind of as we said, that he was more or less misled by Kuvira. And of course, this plays a big part in Opal forgiving him. And it also has Julie sort of be the harbinger of doom there by pointing out, like, yeah, Kuvira is going to attack Republic City in 2 weeks. So our heroes do not have a lot of time to get their stuff together. And I'll be very interested to see what happens when Varric and Julie meet again. Whether or not this was all some part of some sort of master plan of Varric's, or if this is just something that Julie improvised on her own. Whatever the case, I think that'll be very interesting to see what happens. And let me see, anything else? Nope, that's all that comes to mind for this episode. Again, really solid episode, lots of fun stuff, lots of really great Toph moments, and just a really nice way of moving towards wrapping up the series as a whole. So with that said, guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good